Hello there again. So in this video, we're going to build on what we have learned in the last video. We went over, I'll just give a brief overview of what we went over last week. So we had the horizontal we learned about, then we have the vertical, then we have the diagonal, and then we have the curve. So and then we have the dot or the point, basically just the beginning and the end of all of these lines here. So that's what we went over the last time, and obviously we gave them each their own characteristics to kind of give them a bit more, I think it just makes it more interesting, because this stuff is kind of boring in the beginning to just talk about lines and vertical. So I like to think of the horizontal as a calming line. And also, it just psychologically, when you're looking at a piece, like if there's a lot of horizontal marks, it kind of does that for you in a way. And then a vertical, it's very, powerful, stable line. And then the diagonal is our dynamic line. And then the curve is our, more graceful line. And then just one more thing I would like to add about line before we move on from line into shape. There's like, line is not, like, when we look out into nature, we look out into the world around us, line is not a real thing. It's more of an illusion. Like, it's two objects or two, things that are coming together, like two values, or like a shadow and a light. Like the edge of this newsprint pad against the shadow of the background, it creates an illusion that there's a line here, but really it's just two objects meeting each other that's creating that illusion. And we'll go more into line drawing, and then what we'll learn later is called mass drawing, which is basically like values, like blacks, grays, whites up against each other. Like if I turn this video black and white, you would see a bunch of values, but that's it for a later video. But I just want to hammer home the idea of the line is, it's sort of like an artistic sort of conception, an idea, a symbol, but it's very helpful for what we're going to learn in the future. So now we can start to put these lines together, and they're almost sort of like, I don't know, like pickup sticks or like 2x4s that, like, when put together will create the shapes, and that'll be our next thing. And everything we're doing right now too is also two-dimensional, so everything is reading very flat. Like, lines don't have any dimension to them, right? And shape, that we're going to go into next, doesn't have any dimension to it. It's just flat, So, and then, but we will eventually, the next step we'll be talking about is form. But for right now, let's get into the shape. So, we could start with the square, right? Now, the square is made up of two horizontals, and then we're gonna, so we have that and that, two horizontals, just 1, 2, and then we're gonna do two verticals. And the key is to, to make like this perfect square, is you just keep everything equal. So the amount of height here, I'm going to try to do the same amount as that, and we're going to get an overall like square. And then we can use the side of the pencil or crayon or marker or color pencil. That's another thing. Like, you can use whatever. We're just using this really cheap newsprint because it can be tossed away, thrown away. Like, we're not trying to make perfect drawings here. We're just trying to learn the very fundamentals. And then once we get good enough, then we'll get the, you know, really nice paper or whatever. But so we got our first shape, which is a square made of 2 horizontals, 2 verticals. Pretty simple, right? Then the next thing we're going to get into, we can talk about the let's do a diagonal. So the diagonal, that's ascending this way, and then descending. And then also remember, we're using our whole arm. We're not just like, I don't even know what you want to call that, just a writing, like with your hand, like where you're doing short strokes. We're doing very long and big movement. Like, this is an exercise, like a literal movement. And so you can see, like, and you're able to fill in a lot quicker too when you're looser. Like, if you were trying to do like the short choppy mark like that, there's a time and a place for that, but it's not now. That's why I like this big pad, because it really enforces like to be loose and big and flowy with your marks. And then we can go back to here and we could talk about the point again. So like, there's almost like, you know, there's 4 points to this square, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you could say 1, 2, and then there's 3 points to that triangle. So you could see how, like, you know, just adding these 3 different lines, these 2 different, like, there's, like, the triangle is made up of 1 horizontal and then 2 diagonals, and then we get that. And then, so it's very simple, right? And then the curve obviously is like, almost like you could think of it as drawing like a half moon shape and then another half moon. So circle, it's like, it seems like it's very hard to, you know, like a lot of people, like, they try to make the perfect circle. They try to, again, with short choppy marks, but the best thing to do is kind of just, you can even like fill a whole page with this, where you're just kind of doing this like sort of circular motions with your arm, and you might get like a bunch of you know, it's like going to be like kind of hairy looking at first, but then you eventually get like a perfect, you know, not perfect, but like, you know, pretty close to, I mean, you can think of just like, you know, almost drawing like a giant letter O, but you're using your whole arm this time. And so you'll eventually learn, you know, if you're really new to drawing, and, you know, I have a feeling a good majority of you probably know a lot of this stuff, but like, there's a whole thing of pressure sensitivity. What I mean by that is, like, if you were driving a car or something, like, yeah, like a gas pedal, it's like, at first, like you don't want to press too hard, or it'll go really fast and you'll crash into something. And you don't want to go too slow, because then, you know, the other person behind you will crash into you. So it's like the same thing with a pencil. It's like, we want to kind of keep our pressure very kind of light. I haven't really talked about that, but like, that's a thing of just, it's almost like even your grip, like the grip I use is like this, where you're just sort of, the pencil is like in your fingertips, like kind of like this, where it's very loose, and then you're almost just like just touching the surface, and you're kind of, you know, just loosely. Now I'm just doing like curved lines, and I can do straight lines. And that's the thing you want to do, is just sort of, I would say, fill up pieces of, you know, cheap paper or Xerox paper, whatever you can find, and just do circles, do straights, do verticals, make shapes, you know, just any kind of, that's basically what these first initial exercises are going to be about, is line, shape, and just filling up bunches of pages, you know, because it's this is like the artistic alphabet. Like I said, like this could be like A, B, C, D, you know, and so on. So like basically we're, you know, and now the circle, that really doesn't have too many points. Like it sort of just feels like it's like sort of an infinite thing. So there's really, you can put points there, but it doesn't really matter too much. So we have our circle, square, triangle, and then we can create like a, let's say more of a rectangle shape. So we can do stuff like this where it's not a perfect square. It's more of a, you know, a rectangular shape, and then we could fill it in. Or you know, then you can start like this kind of gets boring because it's very like, you know, it's two almost perfect, like perfect square, perfect triangle. Like you might like, because you're not really gonna see that when you're drawing, when you're, you know, looking around your room or like, and you want to draw something. It's like you're gonna get more irregular shapes where it's like there's a straight, there's like a diagonal with like a slight curve, and then there's like this thing, or, you know, like just play around with moving your arm in different motions, using the side of a pencil, using the top of the pencil, just really getting comfortable with it. Now I think that's, let's just like overview it. So we have like the square, the circle, the triangle, and then we're gonna do like a rectangular, like a tall rectangular thing. So within these 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes, we can create pretty much anything. I mean, and then, you know, obviously you can change and manipulate the size, how skinny they are, how wide they are, you know, and then you could just think of like rudimentary things, like, you know, like when you were a kid, you would draw like a, you know, maybe the square, and then you put like a triangle on top, and then you could think of the, you know, the tall rectangular shape, and then it's like you got a chimney, you got a house, and it's like, oh, let's put windows on this thing and stuff, and you know, just basic stuff like this. And I'm not saying like we're gonna get beyond this point. This seems very simple, but just the more so is just getting the feel of the materials and the feel. And I would try out different things, whether it is crayons, markers, pencils. Pencils is going to be your, I would say, the most easiest thing because you can erase it, which I would say don't erase. I would say don't erase at all in the beginning. I wish I kind of, yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do, is just leave everything on the page so you can kind of, you know, get away from that perfection mindset. So you can just like, because you want to be able to see like the growth of like everything you're doing. And so pens, like ballpoint pen is a good thing because you just want to get used to like, you know, a bunch of different materials. But pencil is a good thing to just stick with for now, but you can explore different things as well. And then you can do stuff like this where you're just sort of almost creating a tone by just, it's almost just like continuing doing the horizontal, but you just keep doing it, and you keep, and then that almost creates like a value, which we'll get into in a further video. So yeah, just fill up your page with, you know, shapes, different sizes, skinny, large, whatever. Do, you know, practice the mark making, and in the next video we're gonna get more interesting. We're gonna actually like start turning these these things like like we think of the square, it's like that's, you know, flat, but then we're gonna see this is a square. Different, or I mean, this is a square and this is a cube. Now, cube has, you know, more, you know, like this is just the square, but the cube has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, faces to it, and so it's a whole other ball game. Now, this is called a form, where this is just called a shape because it's flat. So like when you just see it like that, it's a shape, flat. When you turn it, then we're getting a form. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next video. Okay.